23. Everyday life across the centuries. A. Colonial life, 1700s. Most Americans were farmers. Days were ruled by the sun and seasons. Houses were small, lit by candles. Children worked beside parents. Church was the center of community. Life expectancy barely reached 40. Freedom for some depended on bondage for others. Enslaved Africans built the wealth of port cities like Charleston and New Orleans while having no rights of their own. B. The frontier, 1800s. Wagons rolled west on the Oregon and Santa Fe trails. Families traveled for months facing disease and raids. Railroads created boomtowns overnight. Buffalo herds disappeared as native nations were forced onto reservations. The myth of the self-reliant cowboy was born, though real Western life included Mexicans, Chinese railroad workers, black soldiers, and countless indigenous peoples rarely shown in legend. C. The industrial city, 1900s. By 1900, New York, Chicago, and Pittsburgh thundered with factories. Tenements housed immigrant families in 1 or 2 rooms. Children sold newspapers in the streets. Unions fought for the 8-hour workday. Electric lights, elevators, and subways created a new kind of human being, the modern urban American. D. Suburban dream, 1950s. After World War II, millions moved to suburbs like Levittown. Veterans bought homes with GI Bill loans. Television shaped a common culture. Rock and roll frightened parents and thrilled teenagers. But this dream was often closed to black families through discriminatory housing laws, planting seeds of later unrest. E. Digital life, 2000s. By the early 21st century, dating, shopping, and politics moved online. Work followed people home through email. A person could carry the world's knowledge in a pocket. America became less a place and more a network. 24. Voices that shaped the nation. Leaders. George Washington proved power could be surrendered. Abraham Lincoln preserved the Union and ended slavery. Franklin Roosevelt taught government to protect the vulnerable. Martin Luther King Jr. forced America to face its conscience. Ordinary heroes. Harriet Tubman guiding the enslaved to freedom. Cesar Chavez organizing farm workers. The unknown soldiers at Normandy. Nurses in COVID hospital wards. American history was never made only by presidents. 25. Contradictions at the heart of America. Freedom and slavery existing at the same time. Immigrants welcomed yet feared. Wealth beside poverty. Religion inspiring both tolerance and persecution. A nation of laws that often had to be broken to achieve justice. These contradictions created tension, but also movement forward. 26. Symbols of the American idea. The Constitution, belief in written rules above kings. The frontier, faith in new beginnings. The Statue of Liberty, promise to the outsider. Jazz and hip-hop, creativity born from struggle. The vote, the simple, radical notion that power comes from people. 27. Lessons from the long story. Democracies are fragile and require constant care. Diversity has been conflict, but also genius. Economic opportunity determines social peace. Movements from below change more than speeches from above. 28. Opening toward tomorrow. The next decades will test questions earlier generations never faced. Can AI remain under human control? Can a car-based nation survive climate limits? Can truth exist in an age of deepfakes? Can a multiracial republic stay united without a single dominant culture? The answers will decide whether the American experiment continues or becomes another chapter like Rome or Britain in the long history of rising and falling powers. Where should we go next? I can keep expanding in several powerful directions. Chapter-style deep dives. Native American history, pre-1492 to today. Slavery to civil rights to mass incarceration. The space race in American science. Immigration stories by decade. Documentary script version. Narrator text, scene descriptions, archive footage suggestions, music cues. Educational edition. Exam questions, Glossary of key terms, timeline tables. 29. The Native American story, survival within a new nation. From allies to obstacles, 1776 to 1830. When the United States was born, more than 1,000 indigenous nations still controlled most of the continent. During the Revolution, many tribes tried to remain neutral. Others sided with Britain, believing the crown less hungry for land than American settlers. The new republic quickly revealed its intentions. Treaties were signed and repeatedly broken. The Northwest Indian War in the 1990s ended with U.S. victory and massive land loss. Presidents spoke of civilizing native peoples while encouraging settlers to push west. Thomas Jefferson imagined Indians would either adopt European-style farming or disappear. The Age of Removal in 1830s. The turning point came under Andrew Jackson. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 forced southeastern nations off their homelands. The Trail of Tears killed thousands through hunger, disease, and exposure. Gold discoveries in Georgia and Alabama mattered more than any treaty. The Supreme Court even ruled in favor of the Cherokee, but Jackson ignored the decision, revealing the weakness of native rights in American law. Life on reservations, 1850 to 1900. As the United States pushed to the Pacific, buffalo were slaughtered to starve Plains nations into submission. Wars with the Sioux, Cheyenne, Apache, and others ended in massacres such as Wounded Knee, 1890. Children were taken to boarding schools where speaking native languages was punished. Kill the Indian, save the man. Reservations were meant not as homelands but as tools of control. Resistance and adaptation. Yet native peoples never vanished. The Nez Perce under Chief Joseph fought a brilliant retreat in 1877. The Navajo rebuilt flocks and culture after the Long Walk. The Iroquois Confederacy continued to influence ideas of federalism. Survival itself became a form of resistance. The 20th century rebirth. New Deal for Indians. In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act ended allotment policies and allowed tribal governments to reform. World War II. Tens of thousands served in the U.S. military. Navajo code talkers helped win the Pacific War using their language as an unbreakable code. Red Power movement. In the 1960s to 1970s, a new generation demanded sovereignty. Occupation of Alcatraz, 1969. Wounded Knee protest, 1973. The American Indian movement forced America to listen again. Native America today. Modern indigenous life is diverse. Some reservations operate casinos and colleges. Tribes fight for water rights, sacred lands, and missing indigenous women. Languages once near death are being taught to children again. The United States finally recognizes, at least in words, that native nations are not relics but living governments. Why this matters to the whole American story. The United States was built on existing nations, not empty land. American democracy borrowed ideas from indigenous confederacies while destroying them. Every debate about borders, environment, and sovereignty echoes this original conflict. The first Americans are still shaping the future of America. 30. Transition to the next chapter. From here, the national story flows into other crucial currents: the creation of slavery and African American life, immigration waves that remade cities, the Cold War at home and abroad, space, technology, and the digital age. 31. Slavery, the foundation and the wound, 1619 to 1865. The birth of a slave society. In 1619, the first recorded Africans were brought to Virginia. What began as a small labor system hardened into a racial caste that shaped the entire economy. Southern colonies built plantations of tobacco, rice, and indigo. Laws turned Africans and their children into permanent property. Families were sold apart. Literacy was often forbidden. By the time of the Revolution, nearly 1 in 5 people in the colonies was enslaved. Contradiction at independence. The Declaration of Independence spoke of equality while 500,000 people remained in chains. The Constitution protected slavery through compromises, counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person for representation, guaranteeing return of fugitive slaves, delaying any ban on the slave trade until 1808. Freedom and bondage were born together. Life under slavery. Enslaved communities created their own world within oppression. Secret churches blended African and Christian traditions. Spirituals carried coded messages. Skilled artisans built cities like Charleston and Richmond. Resistance took many forms: work slowdowns, escape, and open rebellion, such as Nat Turner's revolt in 1831. Abolition and the road to war. The movement. Frederick Douglass exposed slavery through his writings. Harriet Tubman led dozens to freedom on the Underground Railroad. White and black abolitionists built a moral crusade. Breaking point. The expansion of slavery westward split the nation. Fugitive Slave Act outraged the North. Uncle Tom's Cabin changed public opinion. John Brown's raid in 1859 convinced the South that compromise was over. Emancipation and Civil War. Abraham Lincoln initially. The Persian Empire stands among the most influential civilizations in human history. Rising from the Iranian plateau, it created the first true world empire, linking the Middle East, Central Asia, North Africa, and parts of Europe into a single political and cultural sphere. Its legacy shaped government, religion, art, and international relations for more than a millennium. Origins. From the Medes to the rise of Cyrus. Before the Persians, the Iranian plateau was dominated by the Median kingdom. Indo-Iranian tribes had migrated into the region centuries earlier, bringing with them horse culture and early forms of Zoroastrian belief. By the 7th century BCE, the Medes had built a powerful state with its capital at Ecbatana. Into this world was born Cyrus II of Anshan, later known as Cyrus the Great. Around 550 BCE, he rebelled against his Median overlords, uniting Persian and Median nobles under a new dynasty, the Achaemenids. Cyrus proved not only a brilliant general, but a visionary ruler. He conquered Lydia and Anatolia, defeating King Croesus, the Neo-Babylonian Empire in 539 BCE, territories stretching to Central Asia and the Indus Valley. Unlike earlier conquerors, Cyrus practiced tolerance. The famous Cyrus Cylinder records his policy of respecting local religions and customs, including allowing the Jewish exiles to return to Jerusalem. This approach became a hallmark of Persian rule. Building the Achaemenid superpower. Cambyses and Darius. Cyrus's son, Cambyses II, expanded the empire by conquering Egypt in 525 BCE. After a period of turmoil, the throne passed to Darius I, or the Great, the true architect of imperial administration. Darius organized the empire into satrapies, provinces governed by satraps but supervised by royal inspectors known as the eyes and ears of the king. He standardized a taxation system, coinage, the gold daric, the royal road from Sardis to Susa, and the use of Aramaic as an administrative language. Persepolis, a symbol in stone. Darius and his son Xerxes I built the ceremonial capital Persepolis, whose reliefs depict delegates from across the empire bringing tribute, visual proof of a multicultural state from India to the Aegean. Clash with Greece. Persian expansion westward brought conflict with the Greek city-states. 499 to 493 BCE, Ionian Revolt. Greek cities in Anatolia rebelled, Persia crushed the uprising. 490 BCE, Marathon. Darius's forces were defeated by Athens. 480 to 479 BCE, Xerxes' invasion. Famous battles at Thermopylae, Salami, and Plataea ended in Greek victory. Though often portrayed as a struggle of freedom versus tyranny, in reality the wars were contests between two ambitious worlds. Persia remained dominant in Asia Minor and continued to influence Greek politics for a century. Culture, religion, and daily life. Zoroastrian influence. While the empire was religiously diverse, the teachings attributed to Zarathustra, belief in Ahura Mazda, the struggle between truth and lie, and a final judgment influenced royal ideology. Concepts of heaven, hell, and moral dualism later affected Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Administration and law. Persian kings presented themselves as guardians of order, or Asha. Local elites were integrated rather than destroyed. Egyptians kept their priests, Babylonians their temples, and Greeks their city councils. This pragmatic tolerance helped maintain stability over vast distances. Art and engineering. Persian art blended Median, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Greek styles. Innovations included Qanat underground water systems, monumental columned halls, luxurious textiles and metalwork, and imperial gardens, the origin of the word paradise. Alexander and the fall of the Achaemenids. By the 4th century BCE, the empire showed signs of strain. In 334 BCE, Alexander of Macedon invaded. After victories at Issus and Gaugamela, he captured Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis. The last king, Darius III, was murdered by his own satraps in 330 BCE. Alexander adopted many Persian customs, marrying Iranian princesses and retaining the satrapy system. After his death, the eastern territories eventually passed to the Seleucid dynasty. The Parthian Revival, 247 BCE to 224 CE. Persian power re-emerged under the Parthians, originally a nomadic tribe from northeastern Iran. Their decentralized empire became Rome's great rival. Famous for heavily armored cavalry and mounted archers, victory over Crassus at Carrhae in 53 BCE, control of Silk Road trade routes. Parthian culture fused Hellenistic and Iranian elements, keeping Persian traditions alive until a new dynasty arose. The Sasanian Empire, Persia's last classical age. In 224 CE, Ardashir I overthrew the Parthians and founded the Sasanian Empire, consciously reviving Achaemenid glory. Achievements: state-supported Zoroastrian church, magnificent cities like Ctesiphon, flourishing science, medicine, and philosophy, artistic masterpieces, rock reliefs at Nakshi Rostam and Taki Bostan, wars with Rome and Byzantine. For 4 centuries, Sasanians and Romans fought epic conflicts. Shapur I captured Emperor Valerian in 260 CE. Khosrow I, Anushirvan, reformed administration. Khosrow II briefly conquered Egypt, Syria, and Jerusalem before Byzantine counterattack under Heraclius. These exhausting wars left both empires vulnerable. The Islamic conquest and transformation. Between 633 and 651 CE, Arab Muslim armies defeated the Sasanians. The last Shah, Yazdegerd III, died in exile, ending ancient Persian monarchy. Yet Persian civilization did not disappear. Instead, it reshaped the Islamic world. Persian became the language of literature and administration from India to Anatolia. Thinkers like Ibn Sina, Ferdowsi, and Omar Khayyam carried forward Iranian heritage. Concepts of kingship influenced the Abbasids, Seljuks, and later the Safavids. 9. Legacy of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire pioneered ideas that still define civilization: imperial administration and human rights, respect for cultural diversity, global trade networks, artistic styles blending East and West, religious concepts that entered major faiths. From Cyrus to the Sasanians, Persia demonstrated that an empire could be more than conquest. It could be a framework for cooperation among many peoples. Modern Iran and much of the Middle East and Central Asia still carries the imprint of that ancient vision. From medieval dynasties to the threshold of modern Iran. The fall of the Sasanian Empire in the 7th century did not end Persian history, it transformed it. Iranian culture, language, and political ideas survived within the new Islamic civilization and gradually re-emerged to shape a series of powerful dynasties. This second part follows that long renaissance from the early Caliphates to the dawn of modern times. 10. Persia under the early Caliphates. After the Arab conquest, Iran became part of the Umayyad and later Abbasid caliphates. At first, Arabic dominated administration, yet the conquerors soon depended on Persian bureaucrats to govern the sophisticated former Sasanian lands. The Persianization of Islam. The Abbasid Revolution, 750 CE, was strongly supported by Iranian Muslims from Khorasan. Baghdad, the new capital, was modeled on Sassanian administrative traditions. Persian families such as the Barmakids became viziers, shaping finance, diplomacy, and court culture. During this era, the new Persian language, written in Arabic script but rooted in Middle Persian, emerged as a literary medium. It would become one of the great languages of world culture. 11. The Iranian Renaissance, Tahirids to Samanids. By the 9th century, local dynasties began to rule Iran in the name of the caliph, but with growing independence. Tahirids and Safarids. These early houses revived Iranian military traditions and patronized Persian poetry. The legendary hero tales that had survived orally were collected and celebrated. The Samanid Golden Age, 819 to 999 CE. The Samanids of Bukhara and Samarkand marked a true rebirth. Court support for scholars and poets, translation of Greek and Indian sciences into Persian, rise of masters like Rudaki and Ferdowsi. Ferdowsi's epic Shahnameh, Book of Kings, preserved the memory of pre-Islamic Persia, linking Cyrus, Darius, and the Sassanians to a living national identity. 12. Turkic and Persian synthesis, Ghaznavids and Seljuks. From the 10th century, Turkic warrior elites entered Iranian lands. Rather than destroying Persian culture, they adopted it. Ghaznavid Empire. Mahmud of Ghazni used Persian as his court language and carried Iranian culture deep into India, laying foundations for later Indo-Persian civilization. The Great Seljuks, 11th to 12th century. The Seljuks of Isfahan created a vast